Want to convene this Monday, July 9th meeting of the CRA Board. We'll begin this public meeting with public comments. We will allot 30 minutes, similar to what we do for the Tallahassee City Commission, 3 minutes per speaker. And again, if someone has said what you would like to say and maybe said it better, you can feel free to wave in support of someone else's comments. And we'll try to do our best to move through as many speakers as we possibly can during the time that we've allotted. Roxanne, are there any public speakers? Ms. Manning, I apologize.
I don't have any cards. Who has cards?
I don't assume that there are none.
No, they're on their way.
All right.
You know they're here. Okay, wow. We have about 20 speakers. And the first one, ready, is Scot Carr.
I just want to make, just for clarity, if we could take them in the order in which they were received. I don't want to realign them if there's a way to do that, because we may not get to everybody.
Okay. These are sorted by item.
Let's go ahead with the first speaker.
Okay. The first speaker is Scot Carswell. He's speaking on item 4.01, which is the proof project. Yes, right in the middle. Yeah.
Good day and thank you. I'm Scot Carswell, 1051 Seminole Drive. And I'm very familiar with proof. I've been a supporter of proof since the day they came out, bought many of their products, and still sell them through this last Saturday night. However, in this instance, I have to ask that the issue of funding it with public funds be considered as not a good idea. Proof is well funded, well managed, and hopefully very profitable on their own. The project is around $6 million. They're asking for $450, which is about 7%. So between the person selling the property and proof, I'm sure an equity arrangement can be worked out, or a third mortgage, and I doubt it will kill the project without this $450,000 out of $6 million. This is not an if decision, I don't think. The one that was made here 4 years ago about the Edison was an if. If the money didn't get funded, would we still have that old nasty looking electric building hanging around the park? And the decision was made to fund it, and right or wrong, it's there today as a beautiful building. I don't think this one's an if decision. This is going to go through one way or the other, privately funded. It's already been closed on, supposedly, and the construction's worked and the bank loan's been made. So the CRA staff had some issues in there about there was only 3 emails. Well, I think this issue got clouded up with the $3 million issue of the Performing Arts Center and kind of put it at the last minute. I didn't know about it until I ran into Bill Proctor Saturday night, and he mentioned it, and he's not in support of it for his district in terms of public funding. And so I told him I would come and speak. I think the sleeper in this is the 11,000 square feet of public assembly space. 11,000 square feet of public assembly space, I can tell you right now, will take almost 400 parking spaces. If it's allowed to be open, which it will be, till 2 in the morning, it will be a disco in order to help offset the money that's required to pay for the brewery getting going, which is not a bad idea. But where's the parking? What are the environmental issues for a brewery in downtown? I'm a very big proponent of Asheville and been up there my whole life, watched it grow into the biggest brewery in the Southeast. There's not a brewery like this in downtown Asheville, I can promise you. They have breweries, but they're on the Fritz Broad River that have these big tanks on them. They're not downtown by Pratt Square. We're 2 stoplights from the Capitol, right next to our $7 million bridge. Do these tanks and all of that go with it really fit the planning of what that 1 acre site would be, even if it could find the parking? I guess we could ask Leroy at the Shell Oyster Bar to share some of his, but I think he's covered up. But again, I've been very happy about Proof and supported them in every way I can, but I can't support them in this effort to seize public funds for their last 7% of their project. And I want to thank y'all for the 3 that are retiring, and the mayor for moving on with his campaign, for y'all that y'all have done up there and taking all the heat and making the hard decisions over the years. I know I've been on the winning side, losing side of a bunch, and I appreciated every opportunity y'all gave me to speak and make my point. And best of luck to y'all.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Scott.
Next speaker.
Good morning. Thank you. Our next 2 speakers on item number 401 is going to be Tony Brown, directly followed behind Mr. Brown, Mr. R. Timothy Janssen on agenda item number 601. If you would, please state your name and address for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Tony Brown, and I'm actually here to speak on agenda item 4.02, the Frenchtown request. First, let me thank staff for its direction and support, and thanks to the property owners who've asked me to help them organize their vision for the redevelopment of the Frenchtown Gateway. It is proposed to be, in the initial concept, a $78 million project consisting of about 58,000 square feet of retail space, up to 250 apartment units. But the thing that's interesting about this site is that it involves 8 different property owners, of which the CRA is the largest, and there are the 3 other property owners that with the CRA account for about 90% of the site. And so even though with the initial concept, we need to meet one-on-one with each property owner to make sure that their vision and their financial capabilities for the site is resolved. And with your support, we plan to do that, and particularly through the leadership of your CRA. Following that, because the property owners are proposing a more dense development in order to bring needed retail services to the community, we know we'll have to build a parking garage. And important in our request is funding to do a parking study so that we could assess the demand, put together a revenue model by looking at how other parking garages are charging in the area, and then come back either with a concept that the development can pay for the parking itself, or propose and look at other public-private types of partnerships for your consideration. We're excited about the project. We have had Florida State do an economic study, and we know that it could have a tremendous economic impact. And again, we wanted to thank you for the opportunity to present, and we hope to have your support. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. And Mr. Brown, just a point of personal privilege, it is good to see you in the flesh, and are thankful for your speedy recovery.
Thank you. I appreciate your support on that too, Mr. Mayor.
And just
Thanks.
want you to know that we've all kept you in our prayers during this time.
And I think it was very helpful as a result of that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Mr. R. Timothy Janssen, if you would come to the podium, state your name and address for the record, 3 minutes.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is R. Timothy Janssen, 1206 North Duval Street. I'm here in the capacity as Springtime Tallahassee. As past president of Springtime Tallahassee 5 years ago, we started a music festival for this community. It was a free concert for this community. What it did, this is our 50th year at Springtime Tallahassee, and incorporating the music festival made it a 2-day event. What happened at that point was we did an economic survey, impact survey, and it was over $9 million that was brought to Tallahassee from all the out-of-town people booking the hotels, the restaurants, the food, the bar, and more importantly, we gave our community a free concert, no cost to the citizens of this community. Brought them to Clayman Plaza so we would bring people downtown and have people stay in the downtown. We brought in big entertainment, and I can tell you it's not easy. As president of Springtime, I started this music festival. I booked the bands. I get the promoters to help book the bands. We work with iHeartRadio. We get bands that Florida State University and other concert promoters can't get. We get discounts. We work with iHeartRadio. We bring this to Tallahassee, to the citizens, and it brings all of our community together. It helps spend money in much needed downtown Tallahassee. and it's an artful, we would say it is art. Music is art. It's something that kicks off the Springtime Tallahassee. It's part of the large event grant program. Springtime Tallahassee is probably the oldest one getting grants from this commissioners and state funding. It's our 51st year. Last year we celebrated our 50th. The original purpose of Springtime was to keep the capital in Tallahassee. I think we have more than done that and kept the capital here and kept the jobs and the economic impact of Tallahassee. The music festival, the two-day event, is a very worthwhile event. We're asking for a $25,000 grant, which we've been given the last 4 years. I can tell you, in booking bands, paying the bands, and the production costs, there's no way that we could do it. Springtime Tallahassee is a volunteer organization. We have 2 paid employees. We put on the entire Springtime Parade. And we usually bring about 150,000 people to Springtime Tallahassee for the parade, the festival, Jubilee, and the Friday night really has, I've seen people at the Friday night event we don't see at the Jubilee. And we see people coming from Georgia, and we see them coming from down south to see these bands play, and they stay. The hotel owners I talk to are fabulous. They tell me in November their hotels are booked, DoubleTree, the Aloft. They are so excited about the two-day event. They come in on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So we're asking you at Springtime Tallahassee, it's not a lot of money with what you guys are considering today when I heard the agenda, but we could not fund the music festival without this grant to Springtime Tallahassee. And to all the volunteers in Springtime, we would ask you, and please consider Springtime and what we do to the community and continue funding this event for the citizens of this community. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Thank you. Next speaker we have on item number 603, Kelly Dozier, followed behind Laura Johnson for item number 603, Tiffany Hill on agenda item number 602. Kelly Dozier, 603, Lori Johnson, 603, Tiffany Hill, 602. Please come to the podium, state your name and address for the record. You'll have 3 minutes.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Kelly Dozier. I'm the President and Chairman of the Board of Lemoine Arts. My address is 2101 East Randolph Circle. I want to thank you first for making the Arts, Culture, and Heritage grant funding available to the cultural community. This was a wonderful decision on your part to allow the community, the arts community, to vie for this funding, and it was much needed as the cultural plan indicated. The CRA Arts, Culture, and Heritage Grants Program is a game-changing targeted investment to enhance and strengthen vital cultural assets in our community. Lemoine Arts is proud to have earned the privilege of being a finalist for this important funding. Among our many works for the region, Lemoine Arts brings the annual Chain of Parks Art Festival, ranked #1 in the nation, to downtown Tallahassee. That's a reflection of Lemoine's 55 years of serving the community and supporting local artists through exhibits and art education. This infusion of new support will enable us to revitalize aged facilities and better serve for the next 50 years. Lemoine Arts' commitment to Tallahassee means completing a multi-phase project that will positively transform Lemoine and downtown Tallahassee. A new state-of-the-art education facility, sculpture garden, accessible parking to provide expanded capacity to offer more and better educational programming in the visual arts. We'll also have multi-purpose space for community meetings, receptions, performance rehearsal space, weddings, and other events. The Capital Area Cultural Plan specifically recommends investments in facility improvements with priority placed on existing organizations that have a long proven record. We're grateful that our project directly meets that goal. As one of the most respected and established jewels in Tallahassee's cultural crown, this project moves us toward self-sustainability and will be a magnet for attracting regional residents and tourists to see the amazing artworks created in our local and regional artists. Lemoine Arts recently created an endowed partnership with FSU's opening nights to bring renowned visual artists to Tallahassee each year starting in 2019. That will help us build on the more than 7,200 out-of-town visitors who helped to surge crowds in 2018 Chandler Park's Art Festival. Lemoine Arts is always looking ahead to serve our community better. We're grateful and excited about the opportunity to deepen our commitment to sustaining and improving our cultural assets for generations to come. And for that, we appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Laura Johnson.
Good morning. My name is Laura Johnson, 6228 Buck Run Circle. I am here this morning as an advocate for the arts and have served on executive committees and advisory boards for several theater organizations in Tallahassee and currently serve as the executive director for another performing arts organization here in Tallahassee. As someone who has long been part of the performing arts in Tallahassee, I'm here to speak to you about agenda item 6.03. We all know that this has been a difficult process, with requests supported by very, very passionate people. However, we also know from comments made at the TDC meeting and in the community that we had all hoped to see this funding applied to performing arts groups whose needs have been well documented in the cultural plan and for whom it was the original intent that this funding be spent. There is a performing arts project that does meet the government-owned statutory requirements and which was scored third by the committee, but which was not funded. This is the TLH Arts Project. As a representative of the performing arts community, I'm here to show my support for the TLH Arts Project, for you, for the members of the CRA, and to propose that there's a way to acknowledge the work of the committee while also awarding these dollars to projects whose scores reflect the order of ranking that they achieved. The TLH Arts is a new and transformative project that serves our entire community, supporting and serving multiple performing arts groups, including music, dance, and theater, providing a space to rehearse, to perform, record, and teach, giving them an opportunity to grow and attract more tourists to Tallahassee. Your decision will mean forward motion for whichever project or projects you believe are most consistent with the use of these funds. I thank you for your consideration of TLH Arts and appreciate so much the opportunity that you have to make a difference to the performing arts community in Tallahassee. Thank you for your time, consideration, and support.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Thank you, Laura.
Tiffany Hill. Please and thank you. Name and address for the record. 3 minutes.
Good morning. My name is Tiffany Hill. I reside on 504 Putnam Drive in Tallahassee, Florida. Good morning, Mr. Mayor and commissioners, everyone. I am here to speak about the revitalization of the South Side of South City. Looking at reviewing all the documents that I saw and going to the meetings, it's not, I don't think someone is being total honest about the status of those apartments. My father lives there, and I grew up there. I read that these apartments there's only big enough rooms for a full or a twin size bed. That's not true. There are queen size beds in those rooms. And there's plenty of rooms there. Those apartments are in great condition. Yes, they can be revitalized. You have a lot of disabled and elderly people that live there. What we should be doing is expanding them and making them bigger, a little bigger and more handicap accessible on the inside. Not tearing them down and making them look like College Town. That's not helping the neighborhood. That's displacing people. It's not fair to those people that live there. It's not fair to the elderly. at all. I've heard words of the area being deplorable. When people speak of South City, they expanded the zone to encompass a lot of the activities that go on outside of those apartments are deplorable. That's not those people who reside in there. That's not them. I live on Putnam, on the other side of Holyfield Apartments. So when people refer to Holyfield, when they refer to that Piggly Wiggly that I absolutely thought was the biggest mistake ever, they dump everything and they say South City, and everything is dumped on the apartment complex because people assume that it's those people are the ones that are causing the issues, and it's not. I mentioned why put a Piggly Wiggly there. Brands follow brands. What followed that Piggly Wiggly? A plasma center. Why would there be a plasma center on the south side? Because they know they can get clients. That's not helping the south side. That's not pushing revitalization. Revitalization is to renew, restore, not put people out, not displace them, educate.
Ms. Hill, your time is almost up or really
Okay.
up.
Okay, so thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
So I appreciate changes and everything, but I'm just saying, let's take it back to the drawing board and listen to the community.
Ms. Hill,
Thank you.
I don't know if you've had an opportunity to talk with Brenda Williams, but the Orange Avenue apartment complex project is a Tallahassee Housing Authority project, and so I would suggest that you give her a call to share with her your issues as well. And I can tell you that there was tremendous community outreach on that project, but I know that they would be open to additional comments from the people who live in the area. So her name is Brenda Williams. She's the executive director of the Tallahassee Housing Authority. So if you want to give her a call or visit her office.
Commissioner Richardson, with all due respect, sir, I know who she is.
Okay.
And I've been in those meetings.
Okay.
And it's still not going the way that was promised.
Okay.
I've been to the meetings. They're not listening. No one's listening to the people.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hill.
Next speaker.
Thank you. Our next three speakers in this order, I have Mr. Stanley Sims, agenda item number 401, followed by Mayor John Marks, agenda item number 603, and Jeffrey Mandel on CRA in general. Mr. Sims, if you would please come to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and you will have 3 minutes.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Stanley Sims. I used to live on Texas Street in those very same apartments that she was talking about, but I'm blessed now to be at 1320 Avondale Way. I'm here today in a very hypocritical role. I'm finna to speak against something that I've been fighting for 3 years. And I'm not speaking against this project, but I'm speaking against it because the lack of fairness in the process. I'm speaking against the beer brewery. This is a entrepreneurship process where private businessmen partner with local government to address needs of their community. But my question is, or my hesitation is, now that we're on the verge of legalizing marijuana, will we be giving $500,000 to individuals that look like me to set up marijuana factories on the south side? I'm gonna let you ponder that. But here's the next thing is, we've got Tempo, who has helped selling this project, saying that this is going to decrease in our public safety because we're going to give these guys who has felons, who have problems making decisions, who have demonstrated, like me, an ex-felon, who has a problem making decisions, so we're going to give them a job at a beer factory. Tell the Lord thank you. So, I'm being hypocritical because I came before this dais with this help program, asking for the same entrepreneurship program. And Ms. Roxanne, by executive order of our interim city manager, Reese Gold, he's over there, gave executive order for her not to even meet with me, said that my project does not qualify. So there has to be a road where there's a privilege, and for those who are privilegedly connected, can get $500,000 to establish a beer factory. But those who are not, come off Texas Street, right over there on the south side, been to prison, but been advocating, can't give fair wage jobs to individuals who are yet mitigating our #1 in crime. Despite our good work from our police department and the reduction of crime in our neighborhood, we are still #1 in public safety, and now we're finna give $500,000 to the beer factory to help us change that. Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Mayor Marks, please and thank you. Agenda item number 603.
Yeah, I'm John Marks. I'm here on behalf of the Jane and John Marks Foundation. Our address is 215 East Virginia Street here in Tallahassee. I am the executive director and chairman of the board of the foundation. The foundation was established several years ago, and it was designed to provide STEM-related activities for those individuals who are in underserved and underexposed communities. We've been doing this since 2013. About a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month or so ago, I had the chance to meet Tom Lewis and his project at downtown in Frenchtown, the Ashmore project. And we discussed this project in terms of what I could do, what the foundation could do. He really wanted something in that project to help that community related to STEM activities. That is what my foundation does. If you would go online, janeandjohnmarksfoundation.org, you'll find the testimonials on there and what we're trying to do and where we're trying to go. We believe sincerely that we can help those individuals who have not been exposed. We don't use the term underserved. We think that marginalizes individuals, and it should not be used. Simply put, they have not been exposed to the right opportunities, and we want to give them those opportunities. And with this project in Frenchtown, we can do that. You want a transformative project. That's one thing I've heard consistently, transformative. If you want a transformative project, this project is transformative. This project is transformative to Frenchtown, something that has not been done like this before in Frenchtown. Now, we've had transformative projects, and I've been involved in them. Cascades, Gaines Street, and one that I'm really close to, and that is our smart grid system here in the city of Tallahassee. Truly transformative projects. But we have not focused attention on other communities, such as the Frenchtown community, African American community, in terms of a transformative project. This is transformative. The unfortunate thing is sometimes we get involved in projects and we don't look closely at the substance of the project, and there's this opportunity to look at those things that are financially related to the project, and eventually their projects are not funded because there's some belief that individuals in the project are going to financially gain from the project. I've been to that rodeo, if you remember, several years ago, when there was a belief when somebody wanted to help Appalachia Ridge, $1.5 million, and for some reason there was individuals who believed there was going to be some personal financial gain. Unfortunately, I'm seeing that kind of creep into this project, and that is unfortunate and it's unfair. This project has been vetted. It's been vetted by a couple of organizations already. and it is a transformative project. And I certainly hope that you'll realize that the Frenchtown community deserves to have a transformative project much the same as Gain Street and much the same as Cascades Park. And the John March Foundation is in this to make sure that that kind of activity, that kind of thing happens in this community. I thank you very much, please, for this project. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good morning. I'm Jeff Mandel, 1641 Lake Ella Drive, and I'm here to speak about the $3 million allocation. I'd like to speak on behalf of the performing arts. I've been doing that in this city since 1983, very passionate about it, and we need your help. I really urge you to allocate some of that money to the TLH Arts Project. We desperately need your help to get this going. You could anchor 10 or more theater companies in this town. We produce art right here in Tallahassee and draw people to see it. And I understand there are many others also looking for this funding, and I understand you've got a tough decision to make. So I just want to support and urge you to allocate some of it to the performing arts and anchor them in Tallahassee. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have our next speakers as Donald Gray, agenda item number 603, followed by Dr. Hollifield, agenda item number 401, and Tom Lewis, agenda item number 603. Name and address for the record. 3 minutes, please, individually.
Thank you. Next
Thank
speaker.
you, Don.
Thank you.
Dr. Hollifield.
Dr. Hollifield, Longleaf Court, Springtime, Tallahassee, really? You should ask the Native Americans about the racist history of Springtime, Tallahassee. At least 4 blacks lynched in Leon County, according to the Lynching Museum in Montgomery, Alabama. Black lives don't matter. Blacks died after being turned away from TMH, owned by the city, from 1948 to 1965. Black lives don't matter. Dangerous cancer-causing pollutants dumped all over the South Side for decades: benzo, apyrene, chromium, arsenic, other things I can't pronounce. Big Bend Care is a nonprofit with no possibility of tax increment financing, scheduled to receive $1.5 million in tax dollars from the Frenchtown CRA. Black lives don't matter. Piggly Wiggly, $205,000 from the CRA, Frenchtown CRA money, which allows them to sell subsidized tobacco products to 18-year-old high school students on the South Side. It is well known that tobacco companies target black people and poor people. Powerful lobbyists, such as city lobbyist Sean Pittman and others, have worked on their behalf. Black lives don't matter. Childhood poverty in South City as high as 80%. 80% childhood poverty. While the CRA hands out money like water to defunct Walgreens, Ron Sachs, the Seminole Boosters, Doubletree Hotel, and it goes on and on and on. A non-representative Frenchtown CRA advisory committee that will do anything Roxanne tells them to do voted to give a beer-making joint nearly $500,000 to locate on the South Side. First, the CRA tries to gentrify black people out of existence. Black people get priced out of their own neighborhoods. Now they apparently want to kill us. Tobacco kills 480,000 people each year in the U.S. alone, and millions in the third world. Alcohol can have a devastating impact on multiple organ systems, including the heart, liver, brain, and the developing fetus. Fetal alcohol syndrome adds to the already obscenely high levels of infant and maternal mortality and morbidity in the black community. The economic cost of excessive alcohol consumption was estimated at $249 billion in 2010, according to the CDC. Roxanne and the CRA are trying to ram this obscenity down the throats of the black community with hardly any public notice or discussion. Most people in the community don't even know about the vote today. The vote should be delayed until people in the community have had adequate time to discuss and evaluate this proposal and the impact that it has on the community. The lack of adequate notice violates the spirit of Chapter 119 Public Records, if not the letter of that law.
Thank you.
Next speaker.
Next speaker, Tom Lewis, please.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thomas Lewis, with Big Bend Community Development Corporation, 421 West Georgia Street. Commissioners, in a recent article in the Tallahassee Democrat regarding the Big Bend CDC and its proposal for the restoration of Ashmore's Museum, one of the issues that, while several issues were addressed, one of the issues that wasn't addressed by the reporter was, what did they do with the money they were lent? The answer is the Big Bend CDC constructed in Frenchtown, in the middle of Frenchtown, in the middle of the Frenchtown Southside CRA, an exquisite $20 million, 88-unit affordable housing, workforce housing development. The investment by the Big Bend CDC in Frenchtown was made without $1 of CRA money. There's no CRA money in that project. This project will contribute 100% of the taxes it pays on the improvements to the land to the Southside CRA. That amount is estimated to be between $60,000 and $70,000 a year. Over the extended life of the CRA, which is 20 years, we'll contribute over $1.4 million to the Frenchtown CRA. Didn't get a dollar for the $20 million project. We were awarded money. Let me back up and be completely open. We were awarded money, but we looked at our numbers of our project and said we didn't need the CRA money in this project, so we turned down the award. The Big Bend CDC has a proven track record of over 18 years of performance. We've been responsible for the construction and rehabilitation of over 125 units of affordable housing in Frenchtown. We have, over the last 19 months, repaid the city's Housing Affordable Trust Fund. That's the fund that, it doesn't repeat itself. It's a lump sum of money, and it needs to be paid back. We've paid back $812,237 of that money. The remaining $120,000 that we owe the fund is guaranteed by Wells Fargo, because they're the one that makes the distribution of the developer's fees, and we pledged our developer fee. We made a developer fee of $405,000 on that project that went to the Frenchtown CDC. We pledged $250,000 of it to finish paying off our debt, and that'll be paid by at least by the end of January. Through the Castanis Village development, over the, I mentioned the $1.4 million. Additionally, the kind of services that we provided to this community over a 5-year period, a contract we had with Bed Bath & Beyond, Home Depot, We provided over $750,000 of personal home items that we distributed to the homeless shelter, to the Hope community.
Mr. Lewis, I'm sorry, your time has expired. We could just...
I would just ask that you recognize that we're investing $50,000 of our developer's fee back into the project. I don't know if any other organization is investing any money of their own, but we're putting our funds back into the project of $50,000, and we ask that you support the restoration of the Ashmore Museum. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Thank you. Our next set of speakers will be Professor William Tucker, followed by Richard Dusenbery, followed by Dr. Irwin Jackson. Professor Tucker, you'll have 3 minutes. Mr. Dusenbery, you'll have 3 minutes. But for Mr. Jackson, he is listed to speak on 2 items. So in that case, I assume 6 minutes, 3 minutes each.
Am I next?
That's not how it works.
Yes, sir.
No.
That's not how it works, actually.
No.
It's 3 minutes, and you can go back through the rotation for the next item.
Okay.
Good morning. My name is William Tucker. I live at 2802 Primrose Lane, Tallahassee 32301. It has been reported that Proof Brewery will receive many tax breaks for the next 7 years, 70% development and 70% for land improvement and other tangibles. With such tax incentives, why is CRA help needed? This business is extremely well capitalized. As the first speaker indicated, they don't need $400,000 from the Frenchtown CRA. Just that's not necessary. The old Coke site, I agree, is indeed a blight and needs to be improved. What kind of contamination? It is reported that there's environmental contamination. What kind of contamination is there? Will it be cleaned up, and at what cost? Who's going to pay for that? There is no doubt the site needs improvement, and we'll talk about that. I might be more sanguine, just a little more sanguine about this, about a craft brewery on this site, if it were a minority-owned business. I have reasons for that. There are almost no black people in the craft beer industry. I didn't realize that until I started looking into this. In Tallahassee, there are about 5 other establishments similar to Proof. None are black-owned. Nationally, there are several reasons for the lack of black penetration in this industry. Lack of available funding, finances, nothing new here. Little cultural history of craft beer drinkers among black people. About 3% for black people and 80% for whites. It's almost non-existent. I had never been to Proof, and I went there yesterday just to see what it was like. Beautiful place. Nothing will likely change. So there's not going to be much of a cultural impact by putting this place there. It'll just be there. Craft beer places are usually far from the black community, and moving Proof from Railroad Square to South Monroe does not increase its penetration into the black community. The move is strictly west to east with no southward shift, none. I drove the distance. It takes 2 minutes, so it didn't really do much. It just gave them more space. The lack of minority participation in the craft beer industry is carefully explained in an article at www.thrilllist.com. You ought to go and read it. It's several pages long. It tells you a lot. I do not doubt the borough's ability to make a go of this expansion of Proof. They got a good record.
Professor
I just don't see the necessity or wisdom of support from the Frenchtown CRA. It's not necessary.
Thank you, Dr. Tucker. Next speaker.
Richard Dusenbery, item number 603.
My name is Richard Dusenbery. I live at 439 West Georgia Street, and I'm speaking on 6.03. I urge you not to grant any arts money to the Frenchtown or the Big Bend CDC. I might give you a little information about how the CDC came to own the Ashmore property. This was a City Commission agenda item, May 12, 2004, with Mr. Lewis as city employee. Quote, the FTCDC is seeking a bridge loan of $250,000 to purchase Ashmore's Antiques. That's part of the village marketplace. This loan would be for a period of 2 years. The $250,000 bridge loan will be repaid from CDBG funds that have been set aside for Frenchtown revitalization. So that's what went down in 2004. The Frenchtown Village Marketplace, advertised as coming in 2006, never came. It was a wonderful project, but we don't get it in Frenchtown. Ashmore's was retained by the CDC. The CDC continued to receive CDBG revitalization funds allocated to Frenchtown. By 2016, they had received approximately $860,000 of such funds, and they did not pay off the loan. So I don't know whether it's paid off now, but what I do know is that this CDC has a pattern. It's an institutional pattern, organizational quality of not delivering on promises. Whatever Mr. Lewis is saying they have accomplished, that's not what they've been given the money for. They use it in different ways. I think this is an organizational problem. I think if you go back and look at Sam McCall's audit of the CDC from about 10 years ago, or Bert Fletcher's from about 2 years ago, you'll see that this is an ongoing, continuous problem. This is just one issue area where it's a problem. So please, do not fund the CDC with this art grant. You ought to be trying to retrieve the property they've been given for other purposes, which they have not made use of, like the Tish Bird property. And I wish Mayor Marks would design a program to make use of that property. Thank you very much.
Next speaker, thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Dr. Irwin Jackson on agenda number 4. You'll have 3 minutes, followed by Ronnie Wright, Carrie Galloway, and Ms. Myesha Mitchell.
Dr. Irwin Jackson, 1341, Jackson Bluff. City Attorney Jackson, point of order if I can. I was the third person who walked in here today. All the forms that were put there in the back, they were not in a particular order as you come in. I watched the young lady up there go through the forms. There's these people, they want to hear it speak. They're moved to the front. Other people are moved to the back. To eliminate this problem, you need to have someone accepting the forms as they come in and then let us speak. That's why I got here 45 minutes early, and you see I'm near the end of the line.
Mr.
So
Jackson,
if we can look into that, Mr. Mayor, that'd be very helpful.
Mr. Jackson, you hold 1 second. Will you stop the time? Don't start it over. We're going to include his comments.
Well, you're going to include what time? Your time talking?
No,
this is becoming a habit. Every time I get up here to talk,
Mr. Jackson,
Mayor, you want to speak.
Mr. Jackson.
But if I'm waiting and I'm pointing out a fact, the fact is we're not following the presentations as people come in here, and they're being manipulated. I sat back here and watched them.
Mr. Jackson, I just want to clarify.
Begin my 3 minutes right now.
I want to clarify for you and also the audience that
you want to clarify.
The reason
this is your 3 minutes, not my 3 minutes.
These are my minutes.
Thank you.
These are my minutes. You've already eaten up one of yours, and we'll restore.
No, we haven't. I had a point of order for the city attorney. Actually, I wasn't talking to you. I was asking the city attorney.
Mr. Jackson,
the point of order.
I'm going to clarify.
I think I can do.
I'll clarify for you and also the audience that the reason we're going to hear from each of the speakers is because the speaker forms were oriented by issue, which didn't acknowledge the order in which people arrived. So we're going to hear from all the speakers who submitted.
That's not true either. You've heard from 401. Why didn't we hear from all 401 first? We did 401, 603. We got John Marks came in 20 minutes later. He was able to speak.
Start the 3 minutes,
yeah.
please.
Do you have anything else you want to clarify, Mr. Mayor?
You've got 2 minutes remaining, sir.
3 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, we'll see.
401. I ask that the City Commission, this council, vote against 401 because it's simply wrong. It is wrong to give tax money to a private company because the bank loan wasn't large enough to cover the entire project. I know, I know that you've built a bar for the mayor's buddy, Adam Corey, and I guess you could use that as justification for building another bar. I don't think that's adequate. This proposal was created by J.T. Burnett to benefit J.T. Burnett. The worst kept fact in Tallahassee is J.T. Burnett and Scott Maddox are the prime targets of an ongoing FBI investigation, in a large part because of the millions of dollars that this organization, the CRA, has given them. The Coke building, let's look at a little bit of history here. The Coke building was first sold to the motor shop, cycle shop across the street, but the city refused to give them a permit. Someone in City Hall calls J.T. Burnett, and he immediately buys this building for approximately $100,000 less. The city has refused to allow an established business to move across the street from the east side to the west side, but opening a bar manufacturing plant is just fine. It's important that this at least be postponed, an investigation be done to stop the continued corruption in the city of Tallahassee. John Marks made a comment. I thought it was kind of cute. He was talking about ADE. He said, "Oh, I didn't personally take any money." Well, that's a bald-faced lie. He took $86,000, and that's why the city manager sent the contract back. I pointed out the corruption. The city manager sent that money back. John Marks, you're an embarrassment to this community. Erwin Jackson, Tallahassee Truth Teller, thank you very much.
Great. Next speaker, thank you.
Ronnie Wright on agenda item number 401, followed by Terry Galloway.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ronnie Wright. I live at 1612 Levy Avenue. I didn't intend to speak. I came to watch the meeting, but I ended up putting my speaker card in because I wanted to let you all know that I've been on lots of these different sort of committees that have been looking at things and looking at development, and you all know me as former Providence president and someone who's been really looking at how change should be happening for our community and trying to watch to make sure that gentrification doesn't really play a large part in that, because we really want to make sure that as we're redeveloping CRA monies, that we're looking to enhance the community as it is, as well as increase the tax base, and as well as make sure that it serves a larger community. So it's a lot of different things that I think it has to do all at once. But the one that, but for proof, I felt like it was a good fit because we have been using monies to build things and to make a higher tax base, but at the same time, it hasn't really been bringing in permanent jobs. Some of the permanent jobs have been like the grocery store and things like that, but when it comes to construction, it's temporary. It's just a little bit for a little bit of time. And for me, the thing that set Proof apart was that it's my next door neighbor. I live in Providence, so it's right down the street from Railroad Square. And many of my guests, I have 2 Airbnb homes in Providence, and many of my guests come, and I recommend that they go to see the different things that are around, and Railroad Square is one of them. And many of them enjoy going to Proof. But for me, what I like is that I see the same people. Like, that's one of the things that I'm noticing about the revitalization of Tallahassee in general, is that you walk around and you see t-shirts from Costanero, you see Liberty t-shirts, you see people walking around in their shirts living in the same area where they're working. And that's the kind of redevelopment that I think we're trying to have. And one of the things that Proof mentioned was that they were going to have several new jobs. They already have permanent jobs, but they're adding permanent jobs and not just labor jobs where it's just for a little bit and then they go away. So that was really important to me. And also, I personally asked for Proof to really look into how to change that dynamic of being involved in the community, because they've served their community well. They have lots of students, FSU and FAMU students that go to Proof, and I see them enjoying themselves outside in the beer garden and inside. But moving into a community, SOMO, it's different, and the people in the neighborhoods around there will have different needs. And so I wanted to ask them, and I think they've been working on it, to really look at how they can be a part of the community, because the community needs are going to be different. There's a lot of Christianity.
Thank
and
you
some
for
of
your
that.
comments, Ms. Wright. Your
Thank
time
you.
has expired.
Okay.
you, Ronnie.
So anyway, I just wanted to say, I just wanted to add some information for you all. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker. Thank you for your service.
Well, good morning. I'm Carrie Galloway. I live on the south side at 1402 South Meridian. I work on the south side at Railroad Square with the Mickey Faust Club. And I'm in support of a couple of things, but the major thing I'm in support of is that the TLAH Arts. And I had no horse in that race. So I was interested in all the projects, and I took it upon myself to go down and look at the space that was being proposed, and it happens to be about 2 blocks away from where I live. And you want to talk about blighted areas? There are somewhat blighted areas. There are no sidewalks. There are some things. There's some wonderful new things happening, but every day when I walk, I'm walking on grass, and I'm walking through litter and debris. So I went to this, to where it would be. It's under the overpass. It's an old city building. I looked at it, looked in it, looked around it. I saw that they have the bikes, they have the new beginning of that park, and I thought, what a great idea. If anything fit all of the criteria of the CRA, that project did. It's a public building, and it's a nonprofit. It's supporting the arts on all sides. It's beautifully, uniquely located. And you can see where this was once promised. I remember about this underpass thing. They were promising there could be festivals, because isn't that the Anita Favors Lake, I think, that's out there, that water fountain, a beautiful place for theater. It could be an amphitheater. I could see all of that area. I love that area. They're beautiful houses, wonderful neighborhoods, excellent people in that neighborhood, but they're not getting served. And so what upset me is to see money that was originally earmarked for performing arts going to anything but performing arts. And the CRA is supposed to help us revitalize these areas. What you can imagine, and that's happening in the private sector. Proof has been my neighbor at Railroad Square. I look forward to going down the hill and getting a drink of beer and sitting with some people and talk. I'm not going to drink myself silly, and I'm long past menopause, so I don't have to worry. I do and appreciate your concern, sir, I do. But it's not that kind of drinking that's going to take place. It's just not. It's a different kind of drinking culture, and it's a social culture. And that's one of the things we're talking about. So I so appreciate the SOMO Theater that's up there, Function Junction that's up there. That it was, as you said, a desert of things. So these are projects, particularly the vitality of the performing arts. It's not going to happen just once a year. It's going to happen all year long. And you're going to have people from FAMU and FSU, people in the neighborhood who are going to go and use those facilities. And I keep thinking, what better? Under the overpass, you're going to have what is a blighted, boring area come to life. And I certainly hope that you will reconsider how these were, how they were.
Galloway.
Is my time up? Okay, sorry, sweetheart. I'm known to go on and on. but please do reconsider. I also want to say I appreciate everything that has gone on the South Side, including Cascades, including some of the more controversial projects. They have brought life, and I have met my neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker.
Thank you, ma'am.
Ms. Myesha Mitchell, agenda item number 401. You'll have 3 minutes. We have 3 more speakers directly behind: Pam DeFook, Cheryl Collier-Brown, and Dr. Irwin Jackson.
Hey. So good morning. Hi, I come to speak to you today. I'm Myesha Mitchell at 812 Goodbread Lane in the Frenchtown community. Long-term neighbor, resident, raised in the area. I wanted to mention to you, I know that the idea of Dr. Hollifield holding the sign about babies, alcohol kills babies, it may not be in instance of this time and age, but believe me, over time, subliminal marketing can have a big impact on our community. And I say that to say that working with the tobacco industry and the Partnership for Healthy Florida and the SWAT team and the trust and the young people who've been working hard to eradicate tobacco, it was that one thing, that marketing, a subliminal aspect of what was going on in the community, those messaging that many of our people just did not get. And what happened over time, young people start to gravitate more towards cigarettes and smoking just because of the messaging. So I'm afraid we could have a similar kind of thing if you put a structure. And brewery, fine, I've seen them. I've lived in St. Louis, so I know what can happen there. Lots of times this is great industry, good money for community, so more power. But to use that money from the coffers of the CRA is my discussion here. I remember in 1998, 1999, Scott Maddox was the commissioner and mayor at the time, really brought to our attention about the slum and blight and protection of the public health, safety, morals, and welfare of the residents of the city of Tallahassee. That language came directly from the statutes that were introduced from the Florida statutes 1969. And then it was 1999 that we actually began to do something here in Tallahassee about that. So I'm concerned about the language, the CRA language, that actually changed. Because when you say we are concerned about the public health, we have now transitioned from attention to public health and human capital to bricks and mortar. This is not the way we intended this to be. And this is one of my major concerns. I am a healthcare provider. I've been providing healthcare over 45 years, and I have seen the impact that alcohol has had. Brewery, no intent, no pun to you. But the idea of having it at the foot of the Cascade Park, where we have children and families in that community, and then seeing that in their face like that can be problematic over time. We never see it. I would be gone and pretty much dead by that time. But our young people can really have a disastrous impact of their lives. And I really am concerned because I see what happens to a lot of our young students who come here to Tallahassee. Their families entrust their lives to us, and they get a healthy dose of alcohol and drugs while they're here. So we really need to take a strong look at what we're talking about in Tallahassee and how we want to really move forward.
Thank you, Dr. Mitchell.
Thank you very much.
Next speaker.
Thank you. Pam DeFeck, followed by Cheryl Collier-Brown, followed by Dr. Irwin Jackson, then Jake Kiker. And then that should conclude our public comment section on agenda items after those four.
I'm Pam Duffick, 9320 Royal Troon Drive. I would like to thank the Arts and Cultural Review Committee that was created by the CRA, and also the application process they developed using rubrics based on the CRA Board's 9 criteria. This process was based on the Capital Area Cultural Plan. I ask this board to stay on track with the process and not be sidetracked by people or groups that are not eligible for this wonderful opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
This is Cheryl Collier-Brown, agenda item number 603, followed by Dr. Irwin Jackson, item number 603 as well. Please and thank you.
Good morning. Cheryl Collier-Brown, 217 West Brevard Street, Tallahassee, Florida, chairman of the Frenchtown Neighborhood Improvement Association. I'm standing here before you because I have some deep concerns about you all allowing or allotting money to the CDC for the Ashmore Museum. If this is allowed to occur, I am requesting and asking you to have some of us that's on that board to be a part of this project. I've seen some projects that have been built in Frenchtown that I have not been pleased with, but it's a done deal. But I really, really would like to see where you all will allow us to come to the table and let us know when this is happening. I commend Commissioner Zipper, his article in the paper, and if you can tell by the crack in my voice, I'm very, very emotional about my neighborhood. So I would like for you all to give us some consideration when you all are planning to put projects in Frenchtown. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Dr. Irwin Jackson, agenda item number 603. You'll have 3 minutes.
Dr. Irwin Jackson, 1341 Jackson Bluff. I ask that you not fund the big band CDC. This is a prime example, as far as I can see, of the corruption, the self-serving actions of current employees, current city commissioners, past city commissioners, ex-mayors, current mayors, past city commissioners, all tied together. Tom Lewis, who used to be a senior staff person, he's retired now with a fat paycheck that we're giving him, and I hope he appreciates it. He also set up a little corporation. Well, he decided to set up a corporation with Nancy Miller's brother-in-law. Well, a few weeks ago, they got a big fat city contract for their construction business. There was an audit done by the city auditor regarding that relationship. The auditor said there's a problem here. There's a clear appearance of impropriety. So how does the city commission respond? They go ahead and give the money to Tom Lewis and Nancy Miller, who happened to leave. She didn't want to hear these comments. And Nancy, I know you're listening. You can pick them up on my Facebook, and I'll also be posting these comments as well. Well, that's not enough. So now Tom Lewis is in charge of a nonprofit organization, and guess what? He wants more city money. Tom, when is enough enough, man? Find someone else to give you some money. Give the taxpayers a break. Vote no on this. I doubt if you will, but I have to come up and ask you. And FBI, please, Lord, please, hurry up. Thank you very much.
Next speaker.
Jake Kiker, and then again, that will conclude our public comments on agenda items at this time. The public comment section on agenda items has expired.
Thank you. I think in 18 years in Tallahassee, this is only the second time I've come to one of these meetings and spoke, and this is the second one I get to go behind Dr. Jackson, so I'm in good company, I guess.
No, you're not.
You warmed it up. Yes, sir. I'm here to speak on TLH Arts. It's been a long morning. You all have seen the information on TLH Arts and what it is. It finished third in the ranking with the Citizens Review Committee. We were 3 points behind Lemoine, a 50-year-plus organization, and 0.5 behind the Big Bend CDC. I think the process was generally fair. The one thing I noted at the TDC meeting that I'll note now is that we're the only new entity in that mix, and I think that if you look at the overall scoring, that is why we finished third. In essence, we had a nonprofit board we're bringing together that we're still bringing together. The best part about this process is 6 months ago, I did not know Laura Johnson. I did not know my neighbor, Ms. Galloway, Mickey Faust, Mr. Mandel, and these folks in the arts community, which we're still trying to bring together for this overall project because this one is different. TLH Arts is intended to be a collaborative and collective effort to serve multiple entities and not a single entity. I'm not going to say anything negative about the other groups. Lemoine is an amazing institution. What they've done there and continue to do is fascinating. I'm sure that the opportunity would be transformative for their organization. The Big Bend CDC, I don't know much about them. I will say that to the extent there's issues about finances, TLH Arts is the only entity involved in this process which proposes utilizing a publicly owned facility. From our perspective, the worst case scenario is the city will maintain an asset that it gets back. So all those taxpayer dollars are protected and they are there. If our organization with this collective group of folks in the performing arts space can't figure it out, then somebody else can, but the building and the assets and the money is still there. in terms of the one thing I will say that I think that makes it stand out beyond the number of groups served is the focus on inclusion. And I have to say that the catch term that you've seen in our materials is thanks to Mr. Donald Gray. We had a groupthink meeting with some kids from DYG that were helping us in terms of visioning the space and the idea of using the day-to-day for things like arts incubation. And but with the focus on diversity, it was Donald who said, well, it's Arts Inc. It's Arts Incubation, it's Arts Incorporated, but it's Arts Inclusion. Last Thursday, my friend Christique Henry took me to an event at the American Legion Hall, Teen Night with Darius Baker and Tallahassee Nights Live, another guy I had not met until this process started. And I watched kids being plucked out of an audience to go on stage and play instruments and live music in a space. While it was amazing, I'm glad the American Legion let them use the space. The sound was subpar. The venue did not serve the 150 plus people that were there. Those groups deserve better. They deserve to be included in the arts. We do have two Tallahassees in a lot of respects, and we propose to bring them into the mix. And so I hope you give consideration to TLH Arts Inc. Our goal is not to undercut any other nonprofit or create a new nonprofit. We simply want to operate a public facility for the public good with dollars that are intended to be for performing arts, and that's what we intend to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Max, even though your card arrived well into the public comment section, you'll be the final speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I really appreciate that. Max Hurley, 117 South Gadsden Street. I'm here today on behalf of my client, the Tallahassee Bar and Hospitality Association. We represent 32 of Tallahassee's bars and restaurants, which are, among the most historic and iconic in town. We're a $48 million industry annually, and we employ thousands of people in Tallahassee's workforce. We're here today to urge your support of the Proof Brewing grant. We believe that, while Proof is not a member of ours, out of our 32 member bars, 31 of them carry Proof products. Our members really like Proof. He is a great partner in the industry, and we would urge your support of it for that reason. We think that people really like coming to Tallahassee, going out with their friends, going out to Tallahassee's bars and restaurants, and we think people really like Proof in Tallahassee. And so we appreciate your careful examination of this issue and urge your support.
Great. Thank you. And thank you to all of our public speakers. We're now on item 3.01. Ms. Manning.
Okay, this is a consent item.
Move consent, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
There's a motion and a second on consent. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, no. Motion passes unanimously. Item 4.01.
4.01 is approval of a $450,000 grant request from Proof Brewing. This is a 32,000 square foot facility. The total project cost is $6.4 million. The $450,000 is 7% of the total project cost, or 14% of the construction cost. This project will include an 18,000 square foot production and shipping facility, 3,100 square feet of administrative offices, 3,000 square feet of a tasting room and event space, and a 7,600 square foot outdoor beer garden and covered patio. There will also be 6,100 square feet of tenant production and retail space for a distillery. This has also received assistance from OEV, Office of Economic Vitality, $97,000 in a tax incentive. This project will create, according to the economic evaluation, 20 new jobs in addition to, I believe it's the 35 to 40 permanent jobs that they already have. It will create 75 to 90 temporary construction jobs. They're construction jobs. They're temporary, but they do pay well. They will also be the first applicant that we've had the opportunity to work with on including the Tempo program in their approval. That's not going to cost the city or the CRA any money, but basically what this project does is it allows the Tempo program to take in one intern or one applicant at a time. And the way it works at Proof is they will hire someone through Tempo, put them in at the bottom of the ladder, like everyone else that works at that facility, and train them in the brewing arts and brewing business. And if they work out, they have the ability to move all the way up through the ladder at the company. They've committed to do that more than once. The thing we like about the Tempo program is it will focus on young people from the Frenchtown Southside area. And Dr. Kimball Thomas is here if you have any questions about that. You've already heard a presentation at the City Commission meeting. So having said all that, we're recommending approval of this incentive.
Great, thank you for that. Any questions, comments from commissioners? Commissioner Maddox.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, I want to clarify there were some accusations made by a speaker earlier that the facts just don't bear out. I was not here for the RFP for the Edison. The only vote I had on the Edison was for replacing the windows in a city-owned building, and in fact, I ordered an audit on the Edison. I did not vote and was not here on the commission for Hotel Duval or Walgreens. I supported the Doubletree Hotel request for CRA funds because it was on publicly owned infrastructure, and it was a 6-to-1 vote. I am not going to support this item. I made it clear I wrote my view to the Tallahassee Democrat because I believe that the CRA fund should go to public infrastructure and exterior renovations that affect a blighted area and change it from a blighted area to transforming it into an ongoing commercial enterprise. We saw that happen on Gaines Street. We saw that happen with Cascades Park, and in my opinion, that was the original intention of the CRA, and I was here for the original formation of the CRA. I believe when you give a grant for dollars on an interior of a business, no matter how good the business is, you are giving an unfair competitive advantage to that business, and we're picking winners and losers in the market. I voted against a $205,000 improvement for the interior of Piggly Wiggly, and soon thereafter we saw Winn-Dixie close on the south side. I think that you either have to give a benefit to everyone or give a benefit to no one if you're in government. I don't think it's fair to pick projects, no matter how good the project is, and give them money for things that will be internal to their project and will give them a competitive advantage in the market. This is nothing new for me. I say this at almost every CRA meeting, so I'll be voting against the item.
Thank you. Commissioner Miller.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, I want to say this. You know, we have, as a board, sat here over the years and we've approved assistance to a number of projects. People from Ohio, people from Colorado, people from all over everywhere, and yet here we have in millions, multi-millions of dollars in tax rebate. Here we have a locally grown set of folks who scraped out together the money to start a business, who started that business, did extremely well at that business, and they want to make a lateral move of about, gosh, a half a mile maybe. And yet we have now all of a sudden become very moral about our judgments. And that is not to say, I think everybody should probably understands that I am 100% about infrastructure, and I do feel that it is the CRA's task to invest in infrastructure. Unfortunately, I also believe in this type of assistance to a business. So I will be supporting this change. I'll be supporting the fact that we're bringing yet another dead building back to life, which no matter what anyone says about the Edison, bottom line is it was a very dangerous, attractive nuisance that had to be dealt with, and the city did just that. The waterworks is about to be revitalized. Proof is about to revitalize the old Coca-Cola building, which has been basically underutilized or not utilized at all for as long as I can remember. So with that said, I'm going to vote in favor of this support to local residents who have made good on their business, who give back to their community, who live here, who contribute to local organizations, and are now agreeing to hire local youth and train them to do in their craft. So.
Thank you. Commissioner Richardson, followed by Commissioner Ziffer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I want to echo the comments of Commissioner Miller, and want to thank the owners of Proof for what they have done in this community. They are local business owners, and it really bothered me that anyone would malign for whatever reason. They are a legal, legitimate business. If it were not legal, they wouldn't be in business. And for anyone to malign their business efforts in any way is very troubling to me, because they've contributed to this community. They pay taxes, they hire people, they have chosen to locate in this community. They have done very well, and now have chosen not to go to one of the surrounding areas where they can get where there might be a lower tax base to expand their business. They have chosen to stay in their hometown and expand their business and create jobs and redevelop. And let me tell you something, for anyone who's here, I live on the south side of town. I've said this before. 22 years ago, my wife and I decided to build our home on the south side of town. My father attended the original Lincoln High School. My aunt and uncle were business owners in Frenchtown. So no one has anything on me when it comes to my commitment to Frenchtown and the south side of this community and serving this community generally, because it's not just about Frenchtown and the south side. Tallahassee and Leon County are a much broader community than that. And that's what we should be thinking about. And those are the kinds of decisions that we have to make as those elected by the people to represent them in that respect. So I thank Jake, you and your partners for what you all have done in this community, your business acumen, obviously, Happy Motoring, and the other business ventures that you all have going. Thank you. And thank you for your commitment to not only live on the south side of town yourself, but to locate your businesses there and to create jobs in the area. And so that's what we should be encouraging. Whether they get this $450,000 or not, they are going to relocate their business in that building. And that's what seems to be lost here. They're going to be in that building.
Order.
Did I interrupt any speaker that came to that podium this morning? Not one.
All right.
So the issue that I have, and I'm not going to support the grant, because the issue that I have is that this is for aesthetic improvements to a private business, which I think should be assumed by that business if it's what they want. I know one of the things that's been talked about are windows in the back of the building as an aesthetic improvement, so people can see the operation, I guess the beer garden, and those are just not the kinds of things I believe the CRA should pay for a business, for aesthetic improvements like that could be handled some other way. There are lots where I live, where I chose to live and build my home and raise my family. There are lots more improvements that need to be made, and I think that the CRA dollars should be true to its original intent, and that is to improve those areas, to improve infrastructure, and improve the quality of life of the people who live in those areas, who choose to live in those areas. And I'm one of them. And but for the reason that I indicated, I can't support this $450,000 grant. I would like to see that money go to improvements that need to occur that are true to the original intent of the establishment of the CRA. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Commissioner Ziffer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's a great project. I look forward to it opening. I'm sure I'll frequent it quite often. But as a few of my colleagues have stated, and my reasons are mainly they're going to build this anyways, that I think the dollars can probably be spent for some other things. I think for me, if it's a deal breaker, then it's something to be considered, and I don't think this is a deal breaker to build this facility, so I'll be voting no too.
Commissioner Miller.
I just have an on-point question. Somehow I got the impression from the agenda item or somewhere that the staff asked for those windows.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that is something the staff had asked for, not something that the owners were. And I imagine that they won't be doing that now that they're not going to have the money for it.
Yeah, first of all, the CRA, and I know all of us up here understand this, but unless it had a purpose for doing what it does by way of providing incentives for every part of the city, it exists to do exactly what it's doing in the areas in which its jurisdictional boundaries cover. It's no different than the enterprise zone that exists at the state, where for any business, any entrepreneur who could choose to locate wherever they want to within the boundaries of this community or any other, the state found it fit to help incentivize certain communities that were consistently being ignored when it came to business ventures and business development by way of offering an alternative to get those businesses to locate in that area. If we had the power to create incentives in every part of the city, I'm not sure that we would obviously want to do that. But if we did, then it would be right and appropriate to consider requests like this for any part of our community. But that isn't what the CRA is. The CRA is intended to impact those areas that are located for individuals and business owners who choose to locate in areas that have been traditionally underserved by commerce, by public and private investment, so on and so forth. That's exactly why we have considered these kinds of options in other parts of our community. The idea that we would only consider this in the scenario that it were a deal breaker for this going forward, I'm just curious as to why that would not have been the case for North American properties or who had tens of millions invested and parts of Cascades and parts of Gain Street that certainly our money would not have been a deal breaker for it, but we did it because it was in the right area where we were trying to seek reinvestment. It met the goals and intentions, and then we leveraged our resources to try to bring it to pass. It's very, very clear that it is increasingly uncomfortable for a lot of us to consider these because I think there is a philosophical sort of bend here that says if you help one business, then you're privileging that one and you're disadvantaging others. It's kind of what the CRA boundaries exist for, that we provide a different leg up for those who choose to go into areas that have otherwise been ignored by business, by commerce, by investment, by public infrastructure, by private infrastructure. And no, it isn't, comfortable because you got to deal with, certain individuals who will assign negative meaning and self-serving meaning to every vote that you cast. I'm going to be consistent here as I have in other areas. If I had a beef, it would be, I think that in the future, this CRA should focus a lot more on affordable housing development and seeing to it that as these areas gentrify and as the values of properties increase, that we don't take steps to displace people who might otherwise not be able to afford to live in these areas once the values increase. And I think that's something the CRA has to pay more attention to. But these incentives exist for this very reason. I like the fact that we are trying to build community south of the bridge. It's one of the reasons why the TLH Arts initiative is interesting to me because I'm sure it could exist in any other part of this city, but I think it builds community. I think it brings people together. And I don't think that simply because there's beer involved that we ought to assign a connotation to it that is, otherwise overwhelmingly destructive. People drive every day and take lives and kill lives. There are people who act in negligence, every day. Responsible drinking is not against the law. And that's what I would hope that these businesses and others would promote. That being said, I don't see this as being any different than the kind of incentives we would entertain for a special district. This is a special district. If we're uncomfortable with making decisions around special districts, then we should get rid of them point blank. But unless this continues, then I think it's appropriate for us to have these considerations. I'll be voting for staff recommendation.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Just one additional comment too, lest everyone think this is merely about windows. One of the things that money will be going to are requirements for things like flood proofing. They're in a flood zone. We know that flood zone is being revised, but because it's going to take quite a while to do that and they have an opening deadline, they're going to have to make flood proofing improvements, basically raising certain elevations, interior and exterior. The money goes for that as well. So it's
While you have the mic, will you articulate the benefits that the government extracted by way of its assistance? So there's the flood proofing, obviously.
Yes. Oh, other things. Yes. And we did ask them to open up the back of the building along South Adams because right now it's just a big concrete wall, and we're working to activate that entire area. There's some improvements going on. We approved another one today with a building across the street, but that was still a dead zone, and by opening up the back of the building and allowing people to see inside, that will help activate that, probably to a degree I think that will surprise people. They'll be making improvements outside, such as the larger, what do you call it, like a beer garden, I'm sorry, an outdoor beer garden that will bring people to the area and improvements to the parking lot. Additionally, that's a building that we and the OEV have been trying to get a tenant for, get someone in for quite a long time. And it would take a unique tenant. So that's one reason we're recommending this.
Right. The only other thing I would add, and I appreciate you highlighting those benefits, because otherwise this could be, I would imagine these folks could develop this to be consistent with its industrial use and not have access for the public and not activate in the way that we would want it to. My only other beef is it is so hard to be a prophet in your own land. If these folks were coming from outside, if we were dealing with some of the financial incentives that were asked for from folks who are outside this community, I just think we oftentimes view those things differently. And when things are indigenous and come from this city, from the fiber of this community, that you know, the hurdles that get created mentally and otherwise, in my opinion, are unfair. It's the life we live, but I do think that. I do think that this is special, unique, and it is of Tallahassee. Commissioner Richardson.
Mayor, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I guess, Mr. Mayor, I have to disagree with you there. I am still relatively new to this CRA. This is my 4th year on the commission and on the CRA board. But what I can tell you is that for 4 years, I fought to expand the boundaries of the CRA to include more areas of our community that needed the kind of assistance that the CRA was originally intended to provide. I don't know that we necessarily give a harder time to local businesses, because if this were something that I felt I could support, whether it were local or not, I would support it. You know, I was by there just this morning on my way to City Hall, and I noticed that there are 2 windows on the back of that building facing Adams. I mean, all they have to do is be expanded, Roxanne, if the owner of the building wanted to do that, or if, you know, they were so inclined. So I would disagree with you there on that point. But the reason that I did what I did 4 years ago is because, again, you know, I live on the south side of town, and I'm going to continue to say that because nobody trumps me when it comes to that, because that's where I chose to live and raise my family. Nobody trumps me on that. My father attended Original Lincoln. My relatives own businesses in Frenchtown. Nobody trumps me on that. And I've been a true and consistent advocate for those areas during my tenure on this commission. But this community is larger than that. And what I have always endeavored to do is to make sure that if Tallahassee is an all-America city, that wherever you wake up in the morning, you feel comfortable that it is an all-America city where you are. And every citizen in this community cannot say that. I drive around my neighborhood and I see where there are infrastructure improvements that need to be made, where lighting needs to be improved. But yet, we have the Gaines Streets, we have the college towns, we have the downtown where so much emphasis has been placed over the years. But now it's time for an area of our community that has been neglected to get the attention. And so that's the point here now, that those monies be invested in those neighborhoods where there are not sidewalks, where mothers are pushing baby carriages in the middle of the street because there are not sidewalks. There is not walkability, where you have healthcare disparities, obesity, and all of the issues that come from that condition because the neighborhood is not walkable. There are not sidewalks or bike paths or the appropriate lighting. And so my point is that now, for whatever reasons, we now begin to invest our dollars in those areas of town that have been neglected and overlooked over the years. And so that's why now I am insistent that those dollars that the CRA is receiving be put into those areas to begin to improve the quality of life of the citizens who live in those areas. They may not pay as much property tax, they may not pay as much sales tax, but they are still a part of this community that we call Tallahassee and Leon County, an all-America city. And so when we wake up in the morning, we ought to be able to say, I am proud to live in this all-America city that we call Tallahassee, because I have sidewalks, I have proper lighting, I have covered drainage ditches, I have proper waste disposal. And everybody in this community can't say that right now. And so to the degree that we can make sure that now these resources are invested in those areas, that's where our attention should be, just as it was on Gaines Street and College Town and downtown for all those many years. And so
thank you, Commissioner.
That's my point, Mr.
Thank you,
Mayor.
Commissioner.
Thank you for obliging.
Move denial.
There's a motion
Second.
to reject staff recommendation. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Motion passes 3-2. All right, we're now on item 4.02.
Okay, this item is the Frenchtown Redevelopment Partners request to fund specific studies that are in preparation for development of the old homeless shelter site, which is located between Tennessee and Virginia Streets, just north of Macomb.
Move approval of the request, Mr. Mayor.
There is a motion.
Second.
I'll pass. Was that a second?
Second.
Great. Commissioner Maddox seconds. Discussion? Commissioner Miller.
Well, I'm going to be real interested in seeing everyone's vote, given the comments that everyone's made about infrastructure in the past, and now we're beginning to pick up people's development costs.
Yeah,
Commissioner Ziffer.
yeah, I'm going to be voting no on this. I mean, I'm still willing to give more time, but at some point there's got to be some money from the developer on this, so I'm not going to be supporting it.
Got it. Commissioner Maddox.
The only reason why I'm supportive of this item is because of Bethel's long history of putting their money where their mouth is.
Yes.
And putting their skin into the game over and over again. I remember in the 90s when no one would do anything for Frenchtown, they were stepping up and buying property and buying areas that no one wanted to try to change the neighborhood without asking for any dollars from government. So that's why I support this item.
Great. There's a motion and a second on the item. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no.
No.
Motion passes 3-2. Commissioners, we're now on to item 5.01.
Okay, this basically is a housekeeping item. As you know, we've been working for quite a long time on the Cascades North American Properties project. There were several actions that were taken in order to make this project happen, including the purchase and sales agreements and other agreements. In order to make sure that we are absolutely ready for the closing, which will occur in September, we've prepared a review of the documents, and Lou's here. The city attorney would like for a final action, a final approval to occur on this item before we can move forward. After that, she will issue a letter.
Move approval, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor, let me know by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Motion passes unanimously. We're on to item 6.01.
Okay, we have the special event grant, which Sherry will be handling.
I'll move acceptance.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to accept. Any questions for staff? Commissioner Miller.
I am interested in how much of the support goes, where does this money go? And who will not get any money from our voting to get rid of this?
For the downtown district?
Right.
For last year, we had 4 organizations that were awarded funds, and that was Springtime for the downtown large events. That was Springtime Tallahassee, Southern Shakespeare. You had, hold on, I'm sorry. The Word of South, and also the Lemoine Chain of Arts. So those 4 will, if we were not to fund downtown, those 4 would not get large downtown funding. And then we had some small events as well for downtown, and those were like Martin Luther King Dare to Dream, the Experience Asia. They were one of the small events that received funding. You had the Halloween Spooktacular that took place in Cascades Park, as well as the Raleigh Museum Rockathon. So those are some of the downtown small events that would not be funded if we approve this item.
Other questions? Seeing none, there's a motion and a second. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, no.
No.
Motion passes 3-2. Commissioners, we're now to item 6.02.
Okay, we need the budget slide up there. Okay, we're going to do a quick overview on this year, on 2019 budget, the proposed budget. We'll be back in September to talk to you in much more detail about the budget. What we're looking for today are just general comments if you have any. Okay, so we're going to start with the Frenchtown Southside District. Our total revenue for 2019 is going to be $9,800,000. That is a very high number, but I do want to point out it's very high for 2 reasons. One, we will be selling the Cascades property, and that revenue will go directly to Frenchtown Southside budgets, and that's $4.2 million. We also have about $2 million in reserves. Now, as we discussed previously, what that money will be going for will be a number of projects throughout Frenchtown and Southside that are being developed by the city right now in the work that Cynthia Barber and her people are doing. So we'll be looking at infrastructure projects and those types of improvements. $4 million for the CRA actually doesn't go that far as infrastructure is concerned, but what we can do is improvements to make the projects better and over a wider area, and we'll be talking about that in the future. We're looking at reserve funds again of about $3 million. Our expenses would total $2.659 million. And I want to, thank you, uncover that thing there. We look at remaining funds, and we've outlined all of our capital expenses and previous existing commitments for the year, and they total about $1,027,000, and those are things like existing payments to the Block and the Deck. A program, as you know, we pay back every year from the TIF funds. We have 2 more payments for that. And then we have ongoing garage maintenance expenses. And then Big Bend Cares, we have 2 more payments for that. And so in 2 years, those will roll off of our expense line items. And then remaining uncommitted funds, these are some of the programs and projects that are ongoing that we do every year. For example, our business facility improvement program, we're looking at funding that at $300,000 this year. That's a project we use every year, and we use up that money just about every year. We're looking at committing $1 million toward affordable housing, and we will be continuing, as you just voted to do, the promotional and special event grant program, and we're going to be working with planning and the Frenchtown community on Frenchtown Gateway implementation, and that will leave us $124,000 in Frenchtown Southside for additional projects. Looking at the downtown, it's a little bit of a more interesting picture. We're looking at an estimated total revenue of $4 million for the downtown. That would include our reserves and also our TIF, our expected TIF of about $2.2 million. Our reserve funds are $1 million, and that would leave us in the downtown available for expenses of $2.9 million. Our expenses that we've calculated are $433,000, and then we have ongoing capital commitments, and these are projects that you voted for over the past few years. The Gateway Grant, College Town Grant payment, Onyx project, and then the large one, which is going to make a huge impact on our budget this year, would be $3.5 million at 50% construction for the garage, which is a public garage that's being included in the North American project at Cascades. That's going to be the biggest impact, and what that will do is put us in a deficit of $1.7 million. Now, we don't have deficits ordinarily within the CRA, but to keep this project moving and have it come in on time for the public need that we think will occur when that project goes online, we were willing to look at this. What we're doing is we're talking to the city about taking out a very short-term grant, or loan rather, to help cover that expense. We will start paying that back immediately when the North American project goes online. And we know that revenue will come in, we believe, in 2020. So we're looking at a deficit of $1.7 million. That is one of the reasons that we're recommending, no more promotional and special event grants, at least over the short term, for the downtown. Having said that, I'll answer any questions that you have, and we'll be back in September with a more detailed budget.
Right. This is an update item, no action. Are there any other questions? Seeing none, we're on to item 6.03.
Okay, thank you. Okay, 6.03. You should have in front of you a chart that is a funding application summary that shows all 7 applicants who made it into the Phase 2 process. I'm just letting you know. So I'd like to remind everybody, and I think most people know, but just in case, the $3 million that we're talking about for the art and culture funding is not CRA revenue. It's not TIF money. These are tourist development tax funds that are derived from bed taxes. So when someone visits Leon County, they go to a hotel, they may stay at Airbnb, they pay a specific tax on that. And those taxes are then, they go back to the Tourist Development Council, and those taxes are used specifically to fund activities that facilitate tourism in Leon County. The CRA was asked to manage the $3 million or $5 million that was left over from the Performing Arts project that did not occur. And that started about 3.5 years ago. We were able to use $2.1 million of those funds to build event space for the public and amphitheater support space at Cascades Park. And those are being constructed as part of the larger Cascades project. So you'll see those in about 2 years. There was $3 million left from that, and that's the money that we're talking about today. And what the CRA board asked us to do was to go out to the public and ask them, what do you want to do with this money? What is the thing that would benefit the arts, culture, and heritage community in Tallahassee the most? And we had a lot of meetings. We had several very large meetings with the arts and culture community and the general community took a lot of comments back to the CRA board, and those comments were used to develop the criteria. There are 9 criteria that were used to evaluate the applications. So basically what we heard is we need space, we need square footage. It turns out we looked at other cities across the country, and as far as arts, culture, and heritage goes, the square footage is by far and away the hardest thing to get. It costs a lot to build buildings, it costs a lot to operate them, and that's something that we know in Tallahassee the arts and culture community is looking for. So that was something we brought back to the board. There are the 9 criteria. I don't want to go into all of them, but basically we use the cultural plan. The cultural plan does focus on funding and facilities. It focuses on economic development and education, and then we look for things like how many arts and cultural entities does your proposal support? Is it one or is it many? You know, what are the potential number of citizens or visitors that might be served by the use? So we had those criteria. Each one was assigned a score. We asked different organizations in the community to please send us a representative that would sit on what we call the Arts and Culture Review Committee. And I have to tell you, these people, there were 6 of them, and they worked very hard. They helped us refine the criteria, and they helped us develop a review process. The review process started in March. We accepted applications on May 24th. And basically I think we had about 4 meetings with the committee to do the review of the applications and the scoring. And using the criteria that was developed by the CRA, the committee came up with a recommendation to fund. We received 9 applications. 2 were removed from the process for different reasons. 7 went forward into phase 2. And the committee recommended funding Lemoine Arts, sorry about that, Art for Always, which is basically a project that would demolish the existing education center and build a new one, expand the sculpture garden and the parking lot on Lemoine's property on Gadsden Street. Lemoine had requested...
Ms. Manning,
yes.
Quick question from Commissioner Ziffer.
It's not a question. As soon as your presentation's over, I'm going to make a recommendation if I could.
Oh, got it.
Okay,
Sorry about
I
that.
can
Go ahead.
speed it up. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, Lemoine had requested $3 million. The committee recommended $2,042,000, and there's a $958,000 differential. And in looking at the differentials, board, if you do recommend a project that does not get fully funded, we're going to ask you to apply a condition of either 1 or 2 years, your choice, as a deadline for them to go out and seek the remaining money that they need to fund their program, because we don't want to have it just sitting there. This project that came in second was a Big Bend CDC. That's the Ashmore Museum that you've heard about. They were asking for $1.233 million. The committee recommended $840,000. That leaves a differential of $192,000. TLH Arts came in third by half a point, and they were asking for $3 million. The committee did not fund that project. Got it. And then the project that came in fourth was the John Gilmore Riley Center, Soul Voices Frenchtown Heritage Trail, and that project was asking for $275,000. The committee recommended $189,000. That project, it's one of the 2 projects that basically occurs in a public setting. They're looking for 15 information kiosks or columns that are interactive that will be placed in historically relevant locations throughout Frenchtown. The other project that occurs in a public setting would be the TLH Arts, and that would be in a building that's owned by the state and leased by the city for 100 years. They have 2 50-year leases. Having said that, I'd be happy to answer. Oh, and one last thing. The committee was an advisory committee. They worked very hard, and they basically winnowed down and ranked all of the 7 applications. Because they're advisory, the CRA can either continue with their recommendation or they can make a new recommendation. We would ask that if you do make a new recommendation that you look only at the projects that scored 80 points or above, because those are for sure the most viable projects. That's it.
Commissioner Richardson,
Thank
question?
you, Mr. Mayor. Roxanne, could you explain to us how the third-ranked project was recommended not to be funded when it only was behind the second-ranked project by half a point?
We watched the entire process. We made sure that the criteria were very clear. And I guess probably the best way to explain it is it was a very difficult choice for the advisory committee. And one of the things that we heard from them several times is how can we get the greatest bang for the $3 million that we have. I think they started with the top score and looked at they knew they couldn't fund the top three because you have, a request for $3 million, a request for 1.2, and then another request for 3. And so they skipped down to number 4 to try and get as many different projects as they could. That's the best explanation I can give you.
It makes no sense, but
Yeah.
I'll accept it.
Commissioner Ziffer.
Mr. Mayor, if we could perhaps vote on these individuals, I almost feel like this is the CRC, where we're putting 3 together and we're having a choice of approving all 3 or nothing, and I'd rather not do that. So if it's okay with the remainder of the commission, if we were to just vote on these individually, beginning with the first one.
Are there any objections? Commissioner Miller.
Well, I was going to suggest something similar to that, and my request was going to be that we took the Riley Center first, because it's such a small amount. I'd like to go ahead and vote on that one and get it out of the way, and then discuss what to do with the rest.
I'm fine to take them up individually if that's the will of the commission. Is there a motion
and I will
on
second
that?
if that is
So moved, and
acceptable.
with the recommendation of Commissioner Miller.
The recommendation being
Riley House
the Riley House is the, I'm assuming the motion is specific on the Riley House. You don't need to move to separate. Is the
He
motion
wants
on
to vote on
I want to separate.
Right, we're going to, process-wise, we're going to separate. So is your motion on funding the Riley House?
Yes, sir.
Okay, got it. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
There's a motion and a second to approve staff recommendation of funding of the Riley House request. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Motion passes 4-1.
Can we clarify the amount on that? Is it the committee recommendation or the full request of $275?
Committee recommendation.
I said staff, but committee recommendation was the motion, I
Okay.
believe.
Now, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I am very much interested in a performing arts venue for this community. I think that the community, when this bed tax was collected, the notion was that it be invested in a performing arts venue, and yet not one project that's been recommended for funding is performing arts. One of the things that I talked about when we were beginning this process was partnerships and bringing together many of those small performing arts organizations in the community who don't have the financial wherewithal and are put at a hardship to find rehearsal space, performance space, space to maybe house their equipment and supplies. And to me, the TLH Arts project does just that. If you all will recall, we increased the number of points that an organization could receive if they showed that they had those kind of community partnerships. And so, I think that if we're going to go one project at a time, then we're going to have to consider the funding that these other 3 projects or other 2 projects have received, because I strongly believe that TLH Arts is what this community intended when that bed tax was collected, and yet not one of these projects is for performing arts. And we've heard from speakers this morning of the dire need for performing arts space, and this fits the bill. And so I would move that project and suggest that we allow, if it's the appropriate thing to do, we can discuss it, that we fund them at $1 million.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to fund the TLH project at $1 million. Commissioner Ziffer with a question.
Well, and I understand that. I'm going to make a recommendation after we're all done with this that may be a little different, that does support the TLH Arts, but these rules were established in advance of people submitting their applications, during the review process, and now we're going back and saying, no, now it's got to be only performing arts. And that's not what we set out in our criteria. And so as a result, we're changing the rules. And if that's what the rest of the commission wants to do, then certainly it can do that. But Lemoine followed the rules. They applied for what was available. The committee reviewed it. So my preference is not to do that. If I can make a suggestion, it may be it's a little premature, but if for whatever reason of the remaining two, if they don't pass, what I would suggest is that then we come back and review TLH Arts. And if it requires additional funding that isn't available, that we need to help get them there, it's a good project. And it's a project we ought to do. And it's one of those that is transformative for that area. And so the CRA, I think, ought to try to find a way through our efforts to try to make it happen. So this discussion is not over for TLH Arts if it's not funded today, or if it only gets partial funding, because it is a good project. But I think the Lemoine is a good project as well.
Commissioner Miller.
Well, first of all, I'd like to bring a little bit of a sense of the discussion that went on at the Tourist Development Council, and Commissioner Maddox can assist me with this. As you can see, I have a great big book. This is actually my Tourist Development Council agenda item, and so we went over and discussed for a minimum of 2 hours all of these projects. The gist of then the Tourist Development Council is a council of the Leon County government. We just happen to sit on that as city representatives. But I would say that, if not all, then the majority, certainly, of the members of the TDC felt that they were very disappointed in the outcome because there was not a transformative project, they felt. They didn't feel that any of the projects that were funded were really transformative to the level that they had hoped. There's something else that was in that discussion that isn't evident in the letter that I think is very important. And one of those was that the organization had to be able to raise the difference. And how could they raise the difference? Do they have the fundraising ability to raise the difference, and so on? And even to the point where one of the members wanted to put a timeline on their efforts, because we really don't want to recreate a situation where we have a performing arts pot that is gathering money for umpteen years and never goes anywhere. That's how we got here. So we had talked about the fact that they would have only so long, some period of time, and there were periods of time discussed. But I think it's very important to think about the ability for these groups to raise the difference, and how long are you willing to wait for them to continue to try to raise the money that they need to make up the difference to start the projects. That really is my motivation behind going ahead and funding the Riley House, or, following the committee recommendation, because I feel 100% confident that Ms. Altamise Barnes will be able to find the money, having seen her find quite a lot more for the visitor center, and that project will get off the ground and will be completed within the next probably 12 months. So that said, I would ask that you all also consider that when you're looking at the projects. And I do feel that the TLA, the Tourist Development Council, was looking for something that was more transformative than what was recommended by the committee.
Thank you, Commissioner Maddox.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I echo my colleagues' comments on the TDC. The TDC members, and I certainly can't speak for all of them, there are a couple of them here that could testify if needed, but there was an overwhelming feeling of this is not what we thought those dollars would result in. This was a one-time in a lifetime opportunity to direct $3 million of hotel tax dollars directly into the community for a specific need. And that does not come along any given Sunday. You don't see that. So I don't think anybody was really happy with the process, including people who sat on the committee. I think the committee did a fantastic job, a very difficult job of having to rank and make recommendations. And I'm sensitive to following the rules, but if we follow the rules, we would have a recommendation for number 1, number 2, number 3, not number 1, number 2, number 4. So I was confused by that. My personal opinion, and you know, we go through processes, and I appreciate the processes, but the bottom line is we have to vote what we think is right. That we're the body that are the stewards of these tax dollars. My personal preference is that we spend the vast majority of the money on one entity, and that one entity is publicly owned infrastructure, publicly owned bricks and mortar, with a program with a nonprofit to run the programs in there, and that they will raise their own money to match to run the programs inside. But should the nonprofit fail for any reason, the taxpayers are protected because they have the building, the bricks and mortar. We have seen that happen. That model has happened many times in this community. It happened with the Donald L. Tucker Civic Center. And when it got too expensive to run it completely by the Civic Center Authority, Florida State University stepped in. We've done that in the past, but we never lost the ability to have that building for the taxpayers, so someone can come in and run programs, and you still have that infrastructure there. It is not owned by a nonprofit. It is not owned by a private entity. It is owned by the public. So my preference would be that we start over and we make that criteria and send it back to the committee based on that criteria. That would be my preference. If my colleagues do not wish to do that, I'm okay with the motion, but I don't think that $1 million is enough. I think we're setting ourselves up for failure, and I was also sensitive to the comments made by the executive director of COCA at the TDC, which I thought were poignant. But if we're going to do this for one entity or another, we ought to give them the vast majority of the dollars so that we know that we'll have success with that entity.
Question, picking up off of Commissioner Maddox's point, do we know about the viability of a contribution of $1 million from a $3 million request? Was that ever evaluated, how any of these groups would complete their proposal short of the ask amount?
Yeah, it was, I thought, done in a kind of informal way. We had a question and answer session. The committee had a question and answer session with all of the applicants, and one of the questions they were asked is, if you don't get your full funding, can you still proceed with your project? And they all indicated they could. Just a couple of things to note. Depending on what the votes are after this goes through the CRA, the county, and the city, whatever consensus comes out of that, and hopefully there will be one, the CRA will at that point sit down again and do a more thorough evaluation based on whatever amount they were granted. And again, part of the motion today is we're requesting that the board identify either 1 or 2 years that they would give each individual group to find the remaining amount of money. And, you know, we can work with them to try and make it happen and work with them on the design and all that of the building, but that is something that we'll be evaluating.
Would you mind just 2 questions? One, if we were to send this back to a group, what group would that be, and is that in order? Is that a part of the process, the timeline associated with that? And the second one is, from today, assuming this commission, if this commission were to reach a set of recommendations, does that have to then be signed off by a number of other partners? What is the process beyond this point?
Basically, depending on what the CRA board votes on today, that recommendation then goes tomorrow to the county commission. They already have their staff report out there, and what we're looking for and what the interlocal agreement requires is that the CRA board, the county commission, and then the city commission approve the same funding plan. So we'd be looking for a consensus. Right now, the county's recommendation is that they follow the committee's recommendation. But we'll convey whatever you do today. We'll convey that to county staff, and they'll convey that to the commission, and tomorrow we'll, go through this same process.
And what about remanding to a committee?
If you take it back to a committee, it would be the only committee that exists would be the ACRC, the committee that was put together for this process.
Got it. Thank you. Commissioner Miller.
Mayor, on behalf of the committee, I have to tell you that these people have day jobs, and they have spent an incredible amount of time on this. And I really don't think that they are going to be willing to re-examine it. I also want to add that from what I understand in speaking to them, they felt that they had to choose one project or the other. They didn't, of the $3 million asks, and they chose one instead of the other. Who knows why, but I mean, that just was their conclusion, and that, I hope, gives you some insight into why they didn't fund 1, 2, and 3. There was some strong advocacy there, actually, on part of the Riley House, and the fact that it is going to get the job done and quickly and for a minimal amount of money compared to the pot. And just wanted to put that in on behalf of the committee, because I know how much time they spent. I mean, they spent hours, met over numerous weeks, and really went into a lot of discussion about these things.
Got it. Procedurally, where we are, Commissioner Maddox.
If there's not the desire to send it back to the committee, I'd like to offer a friendly amendment to Commissioner Richardson's motion to change the amount from $1 million to $2.8 million.
I accept that as a friendly amendment.
I'm sorry, I'm just doing the math real quick in my head. So we've approved $275,000. We've got $3 million total. So this is the remainder.
No, we took 189 out, not 275.
2.89. I apologize. Got it. Thoughts on the substitute motion?
So we're not going to vote on the other two? Is that what I'm understanding?
Well, you
correctly?
recommended that we take them one at a time, which is what we're doing.
Well, actually, we're not. We're not even looking at the other two.
Well, we're taking each item
We're on number
individually.
3. I've made a motion on number 3 and to fund it at
Right, but if we, at how much?
2.8 million.
But if we funded 2.8 million, the other two are at moot, correct?
No. It's still.
Not the other two, but anything remaining. I mean, clearly we've got $3 million to work from. So the motion that we're entertaining right now is 2.8 million for the TLH project.
Okay.
2.8.
So we've got a total of 3 million. We've already spent 200,000.
189.
189, I'm sorry. Which means there's approximately 2.8 million left. And we're about to vote on that. So the other two don't even get a vote, if this passes.
If it passes, correct.
So we're not voting on them, even though we agreed to vote on them one at a time.
Well, Commissioner, we are voting on them. There's no guarantee that by the time we get all the way through it, that all the resourcing will be there. But so this would be the time to debate the merits, obviously, of the other projects. And I'll just offer, I do think that Lemoine ought to be in the funding. I'll have to vote against this because it does not include any support for that at this time. But I also agree that I think that we're going to have to look at the resourcing of these things in a way that makes, if TLH is something we want to pull off, that makes it possible for it to be pulled off, which I don't know that we, with respect to your answer before around everyone saying they could do what they need to do, I don't know. I would need to know more about that.
Yes.
To go from a $3 million request out of nothing I'd be surprised that you could fill another $2 million gap. Commissioner Ziffer.
No, so where are we, Mayor? Are we voting on the 2.8?
We have a motion and second on.
Yeah, there is a motion and a second. I'm asking if there's any other feedback. If there isn't.
I have a question.
Yes, Commissioner Miller.
If this goes to the county and they choose to do something different, then what's the next step?
Technically, it would come back to the City Commission on Wednesday night, but the interlocal agreement, the way it was crafted, it requires all three entities, City, County, CRA, agree on the same funding plan. So if there is a disagreement, then the interlocal would have to be renegotiated, and no one would receive any funding on anything for quite a while until that were done and a new process identified. And
how are we going to guess what the county commission is
Well,
going to do.
we can't.
I can guess
We'll
one
just take
thing.
a position here and then.
We can't guess. I was just suggesting, and we can't, while we cannot guess what the county will do, I can't imagine them being willing to agree to not fund the project that was ranked number one. I just can't conceive of a conclusion that way. That being said, obviously they've got to respond to something. If I were making a friendly amendment, it would be that we funded Lemoine at $1 million, funded we have already done the Riley House, and that the remainder go to TLH.
Would you like to make that as a friendly amendment?
Well, I think we've got a friendly. This would be hostile, but.
No, I'd accept it as a friendly amendment.
Okay.
I would too.
I would accept that as a friendly amendment.
So you got $1 million for Lemoine, $1.8 million for TLH, and Riley's already been decided.
Correct. That was accepted as a friendly amendment. If there are no other questions, all those in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no.
No.
Motion passes 3-2. Commissioners, we're now on to public comment on non-agenda items.
Okay, so.
Are we checking for the slips? Okay.
We done?
Okay.
They're checking, I think.
Mr. Mayor, while we're doing this, if I might just take a point of privilege, I'd
Yes.
like to introduce our CRA summer intern,
Yes.
Cassie Davis. Is she in the room? Well, anyway, our summer intern, Cassie Davis, she is a 10th grader at Godby High School, and we're very happy to have her.
Great.
Welcome, Cassie.
Cassie, are you here? If you're away.
She was here.
Oh, it's a he. I can't say.
He, I'm sorry.
Okay. No worries.
Hail. He.
Welcome.
All right, Cassie.
Welcome aboard, Cassie.
Sorry about that.
You're off to a roaring start.
Do we have any comment?
I think they're collecting the sheet for it.
Great.
There are no comments. Commissioner, were there any other comments from the dais? Seeing none, we stand in adjournment.
No, it's not.